Greetings, subjects out there in the vast viewing audience. It is I, the King of TV. Yes, Eric couldn't be here this week, and so the charge of reviewing every movie ever has fallen to me. So, let's see here. It seems they have tasked me with movies about puppets. Although I can't imagine why they wouldn't give me more kingly-type movies. Richard III, The Lion in Winter, king movies. But my lot in life is to start by reviewing for you the Muppet Movie. This is a very good movie. Oh, I'm supposed to say more, I see. Yes, I like this movie very much. I like Kermit the Frog and Fozzie. This is probably the best of the Muppet movies. It is very funny. There are lots of cameos from terrific guest stars. The songs by Mr. Paul Williams are particularly good. And yes, that is why I give the Muppet Movie, The Kings, 5 stars. Up next, let's talk about The Great Muppet Caper. Yes, it seems that if we are going... Oh, I went off the TV. If we are going to review movies about puppets or with puppets in them, again, I don't know why I've been asked to talk about puppets, but there it is. We should talk about The Great Muppet Caper. We're going to talk about a lot of Muppet movies. The Great Muppet Caper, this is the second Muppet movie. Again, you still have Jim Henson and Frank Oz involved in this one. This is the one where they go to England. It is not as fun, I think, as the first Muppet movie. The cameos are not as good, as you are stuck mostly with, English types, your John Cleeses and whatnots, your Diana Rigg, who you might remember from The Avengers. She's pretty fun. The songs are okay. They're not as good as the songs in the Muppet Movie. And, the comedy is pretty good. I like the stuff where the Muppets are all in crates and being flown around the world. But by and large, not as good, but still really, really fun. When you're talking about a Muppet movie, it's not like it's ever going to be terrible. So I'm going to give it 4 stars. In The Muppets Take Manhattan, the Muppets go to... Wait for it. Manhattan. Yes, the Muppets are in the Big Apple putting on a big Broadway show. As Kermit would say, yay! Don't worry about the sounds off camera. They're meaningless. This is a pretty good one. The stuff with the play is fun. The best part of the movie is when Kermit loses his memory. He has amnesia, and he thinks he's an ad executive frog. That stuff's pretty funny. The wedding at the end is really fun. And this one's a great showcase for the Henson rats, for whatever reason. 4 stars. Now, of course, the Muppet, the puppet, and the entire world lost a luminary when Jim Henson passed away. But they didn't stop the Muppets. They kept making Muppet movies. And the next one, the first one without Henson's involvement, was Muppet Christmas Carol. You still had his son, Brian Henson, doing things behind the scenes, and that helped. And all the Muppet performers were still there. Frank Oz was still doing Fozzie and Piggy, and Dave Goelz is still, I think he's still to this day, Gonzo. This is the one where they do the story of the Christmas Carol with the ghosts and whatever. And you have Michael Caine doing terrific work as Scrooge in possibly the only time that a human really steals the show from the Muppets. It's a good movie, good songs. I think maybe even slightly underrated. The best of the non-Jim Henson Muppet movies, 4 stars. The Henson Company tried the same trick again a few years later with Muppet Treasure Island, this time adapting Treasure Island as, with the Muppets. And, it's a fun one. It's not as good as really any Muppet movie before it, but rewatching it here, I hadn't seen it in a number of years, I was reminded that this is a pretty fun movie. And there's a lot of potential to the idea of the Muppets adapting, old literature. And I would have liked to have seen them do more of it. After this movie, they stopped trying that kind of a thing, inserting the Muppets into great stories and classic literature. And I think it would have been fun to see what they could have done with, I don't know, a Muppet Dracula or a Muppet Sherlock Holmes or, some stuff. This one, following in the trend of the last one, features a great underrated British actor in the big human role. In this case, it's Tim Curry, the great Tim Curry of Rocky Horror Picture Show fame, appearing as Long John Silver, the pirate who I think in recent years, now someone correct me if I'm wrong, he currently owns a fast food chain. Is that the deal? In any event, this was not as fun, but it does still have some catchy songs, and it shows a lot of potential. 3.5 stars. This review business is hard work, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to talk to you next about Muppets in Space. This was the Muppet movie that followed up on Muppet Treasure Island. Again, they thought, we don't want to do any more, classic literature type stories. We're going to do a story about how Gonzo's a space alien, I guess. Also, we're not going to have the Muppets sing any songs in this one, because why would you have stuff in this movie that people loved? To tell you the truth, I remember at the time being kind of excited about the idea of a more straightforward Muppet movie, but rewatching it recently, it is a slog. It's really boring. Not a lot happens. A lot of the fun stuff that existed in previous Muppet movies does not exist here. There are some celebrity cameos, like this one, but overall, not very exciting. 2 stars. Worst Muppet movie! Recently, the Muppets came back with a movie written by Jason Segel, who's one of the Judd Apatow type guys. You might remember him from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Well, he wrote a Muppet movie. It was directed by James Bobbin, a very talented young director who'd done a lot of stuff with the Flight of the Conchords, which, yes, that's a thing that I, the king of TV, watched. I don't know why, but there you have it. Yes, it was a pretty good movie. You had Amy Adams in it. Amy Adams is always phenomenal. You had some really terrific songs by, I can't remember his name right now. I'm thinking really hard, but not Jermaine, Britt, by Britt from Flight of the Conchords. Really great songs. I think one even won an Oscar. Yeah, it's a pretty good movie. The stuff in it about how the Muppets had broken up and they have to get back together. Listen, I love a getting the band back together movie. I love the Muppets. I loved seeing the Muppets get brought back together. But overall, listen, it's a really solid movie. It really is. I have a few misgivings about it, but I liked it a lot. 3.5 stars. Now, it would have been pretty nice if they could have kept that magic going for the sequel. James Bobbin is back. Britt is back. The Muppets are back for Muppets Most Wanted. Jason Segel, I guess, decided he was too big for his britches, and he didn't come back, but that's kind of fine. In this story about how Kermit is kidnapped by an evil Kermit who's a supervillain named Constantine and sent to a Russian gulag while Constantine tours the Muppets around Europe trying to find, I don't know, treasure or something. It's okay. Your big celebrity stars are, we don't have Jason Segel or the wonderful Amy Adams. In this case, we have Ricky Gervais and Ty Burrell. They're not so great. It gives the whole thing a kind of made-for-TV vibe. Tina Fey is also in it as the person who runs the gulag. I actually like Tina Fey in this a lot. She kind of wants to romance Kermit, and it's a fun plot for her. The rest of the movie, pretty so-so, but has its fun moments, has a couple of good songs. One wonders watching it, the big number at the beginning of the movie is Muppets Again, and one wonders why this movie isn't called The Muppets Again, although maybe the studio felt like that was too derogatory or something, I don't know. But an okay movie, 3 stars. Well, that's enough from those ingrate Muppets. They've certainly never invited me to participate in one of their shows, so forget them. Let's move on to other movies about other puppets. Let's go to The Gremlins. Yes, the holiday classic about the Mogwai, who are a nice and cute furry thing until you get water on them, and then they reproduce into a bunch of other puppets who, if they eat after midnight, turn into big lizardy gross things. And they threaten Zach Galligan and the always welcome Phoebe Cates in a movie from director Joe Dante. This is a fun movie. It has a well-deserved reputation as a sort of family, horror, Christmas classic kind of a thing. Joe Dante does some fun stuff in it. I particularly like the dad character. and his silly inventions. Toward the, I don't know, 2/3 of the way into the movie, the dad is away at a conference, and in the background of the conference, you get to see Robbie the robot and the time machine and fun stuff like that. But that's all ignoring all the fun and mayhem of the Gremlins tearing apart a small town. You also have the great Dick Miller, who was a staple of Roger Corman movies. He shows up in this. This is a fun movie. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. Of course, the Gremlins got to return in The Gremlins 2, The New Batch. Now, if you are a human being, you know that movie sequels are rarely as good as the original movie. This is not one of those. Gremlins 2 is amazing! Ah! But here's the thing. So they wanted Joe Dante to come back and make a Gremlins 2 because Gremlins made so much money. And he said, I'll do it, but you have to let me do literally whatever I want. And for some reason, the studio said, sure. And so instead of the kind of horror movie he had made with Gremlins, he goes just nuts. And he creates this a movie that is essentially a live action Looney Tunes movie. And it's pretty great. In this one, the Gremlins are trapped inside of a skyscraper. Zach Galligan is back. Phoebe Cates is back. But you also have some great sort of horror movie cameos from like Christopher Lee. And you have Robert Picardo, who was the doctor on Star Trek Voyager. He's there. And you also have crazy gremlins. Yes, this is the one where you have the super smart gremlin, the bat gremlin, the pretty lady gremlin, the spider gremlin, the electricity gremlin, the googly eye gremlin, and lots of weird, fun gremlins in a movie that is so weird and fun and over the top that I cannot help but love it and give Gremlins 2 The New Batch 4 stars. I have been asked for some reason to speak about the Garbage Pail Kids movie. I don't know if this is really a puppet movie, although I guess they all have animatronic heads, so they're sort of puppets. This movie is gross. I don't want to talk about it. I'm using my prerogative as the king of TV to give it 1 star and move on to the next movie. I've just been informed that that next movie is Mystery Monsters. This is a movie from Charles Band's Full Moon Entertainment, which was a schlocky direct-to-video film studio, probably best known for the Puppet Master movies. Mystery Monsters has some puppets in it. It's dumb. This is a movie wherein we're led to believe that a kids' TV show with puppets in it, the puppets are all weird aliens, and an evil queen has come to get them back. It is not a good movie. You can get a full review of it if you watch Mr. Eric Houston and his brother's TV show, Bad Movie Brothers, where they talk about bad movies. But outside of that, I say skip it. 2 stars. Folks, do you remember that time that the South Park guys made a movie that was all marionettes doing weird social and political commentary called Team America World Police that had a Kim Jong-il puppet in it and a Matt Damon puppet, and there were a lot of songs in it? It's a weird movie, but you know what? Kind of entertaining. 3 stars. Being John Malkovich is a sort of, I don't know if I want to say legendary movie, but well-known movie. One of the first big movies written by Charlie Kaufman, who writes a lot of super weird movies. One of the first movies directed by Spike Jonze, who directs a lot of super weird movies. This is a movie where John Cusack finds a door that leads into John Malkovich's brain and lets him take over John Malkovich. Yeah. We are talking about it here because it does have puppets in it. John Cusack likes marionettes, and he treats John Malkovich as his own marionette. It's a super weird movie. If you haven't seen it, I'd say see it just because it's so bizarre. I remember at the time thinking it was a true masterpiece, and now I still think it's very good, but maybe not quite as good as that. It blew my mind when I first saw it. Still, pretty good movie, 4 stars. Now, probably the granddaddy of puppet movies has got to be King Kong, because I don't want to ruin your childhoods for you, but that big ape, he was a puppet. Yes, it was a stop-motion puppet that threatened Fay Wray and all those other people on this island. This is a true classic of classic Hollywood and black and white cinema. Charles Marion Cooper's terrific, or Marion Charles Cooper, or Marion some combination of those was the guy who directed it, came up with it, who created King Kong, one of the true enduring film icons. There are a couple of parts of it that are maybe a little boring. Oh, I hear an alarm. Hold on, I'm going to turn it off. I probably should have had that on vibrate. But this is a great, great movie that if you haven't seen it, what's wrong with you? There are some parts of it that are maybe a little slow, but overall, it's King Kong, man. It's King Kong. Go see King Kong, man. I'm going to give King Kong 4.5 stars. Well, that alarm was my signal that it's time to stop doing movie reviews and go back to kinging. I hope you enjoyed this review with me, the King of TV. Perhaps someday I will return, but I hope not. Goodbye!